Welcome to another edition of Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and this is the results as well as preview show week ending July the 24th. Let me go ahead and back up and review a couple of things that happened since the last video I did. Going back to, we'd already covered what happened with Hay and Klitschko. Still trying to get that horrendous event out of my mind. Two fights, one on HBO and one on Showtime, that I did preview, and I'll start off with the HBO card, which was Paul Williams looking to get back on track against Erisande Lara. And you know, before that fight, I thought I had picked Lara to win the fight, or the fighter who could impose their game on the other one, because they were perfect foils for each other. This showed itself in this fight, but let's be clear about something. Williams got a majority decision or split decision and did not deserve it. As a matter of fact, if I'm scoring that fight, the best I can see that fight being scored is 8 rounds to 4 for Lara. Even 9 rounds to 3 wasn't even a stretch. Here's the situation with this fight, and I kind of summed it up for you in the preview show. The key to this fight was whether or not Williams was going to be able to smother and pressure Lara and basically keep him from landing with power at the end of his punches, or Lara was going to basically keep tagging Williams with left hands, because no matter what, I know a lot of you have said, Williams has to change. If he wants to be elite, he's got to change his game, he's got to do this. There ain't no, that's a hole in his game. It's a hole in his style. There's no changing that. There's no amount of work in the gym is going to change that. And it's because, as I learned, one of the things I was going to tell you about, and one of the reasons why it's been slow with me as far as putting up videos, is that we're in the middle, starting at the end of, I'd say in May, going into through September, we're in the middle of Grand Slam golf and tennis, professional golf and tennis. So, my attention kind of wanes away from boxing and back to boxing when fights happen. But it's during the week, it's mainly focused on golf and tennis. And with that said, as I approach my game in both of those sports, we call golf a sport, but it's a game really. There are holes in everybody's game somewhere along the way. I can see what they are in Pacquiao's, I can see what they are in Mayweather's. Whether somebody can execute something to get through that hole is a whole nother story, because the elite are very good at protecting that hole. Alright, Paul Williams is not very good at protecting that hole in his game, because he is wide open, and the only way he can stop a straight left hand from a fellow southpaw is with his head. And it's been proven time and time again. His matchmakers, his promoters can keep him away from lefties. That's fine. But at the same time, eventually he's going to run into somebody with a very good solid left hand, like a Miguel Cotto, or Margarito again, or any number of guys. I mean, could you imagine Paul Williams versus Pacquiao? Pacquiao would knock him out. And I don't care what you guys say about the size difference. He gives up his size. He gives up his height. And Lara, I think in this fight, if Lara wouldn't have been, cooperating with Williams by fighting off of his back foot and basically backing out, and landed like I've seen him land on guys, where he's moving they're both moving forward at the same time, and Lara lands with the left-handed and catch these guys at the end of, power at the end of the punch, I think he could have stopped Williams. He definitely busted Williams' face up pretty good. Like I said, there's not too much to talk about this, because I think their careers are moving in opposite directions. I think, after the Molina, we saw, the scare that Lara had with Molina was legit. Molina proved, as I will talk about in a few minutes, that he is legit. Okay. With Williams, we had Carlos Quintana bouncing left hands off his head all night long in their first fight. Williams caught him cold and overwhelmed him in the second fight. Fair play to Williams. Then we've got Sergio Martinez, who bounced left hands off of Williams' head all night long in their first fight. I have no problem with Williams winning the decision. I have no problem with Martinez winning the decision in that fight. I have no problem with the fight being a draw. Okay, no problems. But with that said, you know, the hole in his game, which is the left hand from a southpaw, was crucial when he got knocked cold by Martinez in his previous fight. And Lara is a left-hand lead southpaw fighter who just bounced left hands off his head all night long. I don't know where Williams goes from here, because you know, you've got the guy who basically, if we rewind history a little bit and look back a few years ago, you had Antonio Margarito, who's the most feared man in boxing. Nobody wanted Floyd Mayweather, turned down, you know, $8 million to fight him. All sorts of, you know, he couldn't get Ricardo Mayorga in the ring. He couldn't get, you know, Carlos Baldemir in the ring. There was a number of guys that they could not, for whatever reason, get in the ring. And then along comes Paul Williams, who says, no, I'm the most feared man in boxing, and I'll take on Antonio Margarito. Which he did, and he got by Margarito by the skin of his teeth, if there is such a thing. The skin of his teeth. A 15-round fight, and basically we wouldn't be talking about Paul Williams anymore. But needless to say, he's a good fighter. I think this hole in his game has been exposed to the nth degree now. We all knew it was there, and now it's been exposed for all to see. All right, with that, there's no changing it. There's no getting Emmanuel Stewart. There's no changing it. Unless he's going to stand straight up and back and extend his arms and not let anybody get anywhere that close to him, which is against his nature, that hole is always going to be there. Okay, so I thought Lara won that fight going away. Now, on the Showtime card, you had Kermit Cintron getting back in the swing of things. He's with, I guess he's signed with Top Rank now, from what I understand. It's either Top Rank or main event, I don't know. But either way, I think it was Top Rank. And he's taking on Carlos Molina, who's the happy-go-lucky recipient of a draw that a lot of us, including myself, thought he should have got the nod over Lara in, you know, a couple of fights ago. All right. That was on ESPN. The thinking here is this. Molina stands right in front of you. He comes forward in straight lines. This should be easy pickings for Cintron, and that's what I thought. And like most of you, we were wrong, because activity and moxie basically overcame sometimes better technique. And Cintron, you know, for all the good he did against Alfredo Angulo, it went out the window this time. Because I think that Molina, looking at that fight, said, you know what, I can't wait for this guy to get set, I just need to rush him. And that's what he did, and he was in his kitchen all night long. And I think if Angulo would have done that, we wouldn't be talking about Cintron anymore. But I'm not trying to be negative, I'm just trying to be realistic about this. Cintron, you know, is a converted wrestler. He was a very good high school, and I'm not sure if he wrestled in college, but a very top high school wrestler, converted to boxing. He has, when he was working with Emmanuel Stewart, even in the second Margarito fight, he showed signs of promise. He showed signs of being able to maintain his composure, you know, until things got a little bit, you know, rough and he got caught with a legit body shot. But he was doing well for himself in that fight. And I don't know what the reason behind their split was, but because I don't delve into garbage like that. I don't care. It's over. It's done with. It's in the past. But with that said, Cintron has, you know, looked not so hot against Martinez. He deserved to be knocked out. Looked really good against Angulo. Gave Angulo a boxing lesson, and he was actually doing okay against Paul Williams before he dove through the ropes and, you know, basically was left on the stretcher. I thought he was winning that fight. All right, so the expectation here was that Molina was going to be there for him to hit. He'll cross the right hand across Molina's chin as many times as it takes before Molina finally crumbles, and that'll be that. Wrong. When you can't get your right hand extended, it's going to be a long night. And Molina roughed him up from the get-go. This fight, easily 8 rounds to 2, 7 rounds to 3 at the worst for Molina, in my opinion. It was terrible. It almost looked like this was a shell of a guy we were watching. He didn't know what to do, you know, what to expect. And kudos to Molina, because Molina reminds me, and I'm going to get to this also with Above Beneath and all the reminiscing about the 80s fights. Certain situations are starting to remind me or jog my memory of things more, you know, back in the past. And Molina is starting to remind me of a fighter in the bantamweight division back when USA Networks was televising fights way back in the 90s, early 90s, named Ancy Gideon. I don't know if many of you remember seeing this guy, but he was a spoiler, a big-time spoiler. And he was a little unorthodox, fearless, and the way this went down was Orlando Canizales was the long-time IBF bantamweight champion, and Sergio Reyes, I think, was an Olympian. Didn't have that many pro fights. Went down, I think, to Laredo, Texas, outdoors on basically a weekend afternoon, and fought Orlando Canizales, tooth and nail. Many people thought that Reyes won the fight. All right, he did get knocked down in the fight, but he outworked Canizales for the most part. The champion got the benefit of the doubt. I think he won a majority or a split decision. It was very close and somewhat controversial. Canizales won the decision. Well, the future looked bright for Reyes, and long story short, he was shown on USA Networks in the main event on Tuesday Night Fights or whatever it was against a guy named Ancy Gideon, who had not that great of a record. He had kind of weird hair and this and that, almost like weird kind of thin dreadlock kind of thing. He looked kind of like what the heck's the name of that the Greek Medusa? Is that her name? That if you look at it, you turn to stone. That's what he kind of looked like. But anyway, the expectation was that Sergio Reyes was going to basically do away with Ancy Gideon, showcase fight on that network TV, and get himself in line for a shot at that vacant title when either get a rematch with Orlando Canizales on neutral turf, or get a shot at the vacant title when Canizales was going to move on and up to 122. Well, basically, Ancy Gideon manhandled Sergio Reyes, much the same way that Carlos Molina manhandled Cintrone, except he was putting Reyes down on the canvas, and he won a few more fights, Ancy Gideon did. But here's where the parallels starting to draw with Carlos Molina. When it came time for him to step up and fight, I wouldn't even say the elite, but the top echelon of the division, a gentleman named Mbuelo Botil from South Africa, very fine fighter, won the vacant IBF bantamweight title. And he defended against Ancy Gideon, and I think it was also on USA Network. And the fact that this was an A-level fighter fighting against a good B-level fighter showed immensely. And Mbuelo Botil stopped Ancy Gideon very easily in the 6th round, gave him a bad beating. This is what my fear is if Carlos Molina goes up against the likes of Cotto, or the likes of Sergio Martinez, or the likes of, I don't know about Sergey Zinzurek. We'll see how he recovers from the beating Martinez gave him. But against guys like that, because looking good against Cintrone's one thing, but going against guys that are the killers is another. And I just approach Molina with hazard in that sense. But it was a very good. He's on such a great streak; it's unbelievable, and I hope the best for him. All right, moving right along. The main event on that card was the WBA lightweight championship fight between champion Bam Bam Rios and Brandon Bam Bam Rios, and 3-time world title challenger Rios Antillion. And like I told you on my channel, and I was asking above beneath, this kind of reminded me of a fight from 1988 in which newly crowned WBA junior middleweight champion Julian Jackson took on former champion Buster Drayton. And the thing was, the champion is younger, hungrier, bigger and stronger. And the same situation existed in that Jackson-Drayton fight. For those of you who went and found it, I hope you liked it. It wasn't exactly like this, but the similarities were there, in which the champion was younger, bigger, stronger, and even hungrier. And Antillion may have been able to have beaten Rios years ago. And I think that the window of opportunity for Antillion closed with the Acosta fight, because that was a fight he had to win and should have won and didn't win. And Acosta's a fine fighter who went to Mexico and proved his mettle. Okay, and Brandon Rios has proved his mettle in back-to-back fights against both of those guys, stopping both of them emphatically. Now, the fight itself got right off to a hot start. It was a high-contact fight, just like we thought it was. And it was clear from the beginning that Rios wanted to establish the uppercut, but he basically would hit Antillion with whatever he could, and Antillion wanted to basically bomb Rios with right hands. At the end of the second round, when the amount of contact Rios was making on Antillion became alarmingly apparent, Antillion did something very smart, but it also hastened his demise. He started digging to Rios's body, and it looked that the tide was starting to become even at the beginning of the third round, because Antillion was slowing Rios up, and it may have just been enough to get Rios in range to bomb him at the least likely moment, which is exactly what happened in the third round when they got into an exchange, and Antillion got a little bit wild, and Rios basically connected with a right hand off his jaw, and down he went. Basically, Antillion went down face first and jumped right back up. As they started trading again later on in the round, Rios landed several good shots, including combination that put Antillion down hard again. And when he got up and the fighting resumed and the referee broke them apart, as you all saw, Antillion was on rubbery legs and couldn't maintain his balance against the ropes, and the fight was properly stopped because he was going to get hurt bad, really bad. Where does this leave us? All right, Antillion is going to go in one of two directions. He's either going to become the stepping stone and gatekeeper, or maybe when one of these titles becomes vacant, just by accident, he's going to get the right matchup to get himself a world title, but highly unlikely. With Rios, it looks like the world is his oyster. Top Rank is big on him, and there was even silly mention by Bob Arum of possibly matching up with Manny Pacquiao in a couple of years. I don't see it happening, but here's the deal. What do I think as opposed to what's really going to happen with Rios? I think he should stay at 135, fight as many of these title defenses as he can, as frequently as he can, to build up his resume at the championship level. The reason for this is somebody on the channel, and I forgot who wrote this, was saying that Rios looks like the modern day Fernando Vargas, and that is exactly true. Here is where the Green Day fork in the road is. The Green Day fork in the road. You either go basically to the left and you go for the big money, just like Fernando Vargas did against Felix Trinidad. I think anybody at main events or in the Vargas camp will tell you now that that was a big, big mistake. Going after Trinidad, who is by far, you're talking about a guy at the time, Vargas had won the title against Campos, defended against a guy named Clark, defended against Raul Marquez, defended against that Ross Thompson, and I think he had 4 title fights at that point. 4 world title fights. Felix Trinidad had basically 16 world title fight wins at welterweight and another 2 at junior middleweight. So we're talking about an 18-4 advantage in world championship experience between Fernando Vargas and Felix Trinidad, notwithstanding the total number of fights and rounds that each of them put in. It was a big mistake. Now, what is the big mistake with Brandon Rios? I think rushing him into a fight with Timothy Bradley right now is a big mistake, because I don't care what you guys think. Brandon Rios is a very big, solid lightweight bullying around normal lightweights. This was very apparent in the Acosta fight because Acosta hit him with everything but the kitchen sink and was that close to putting him away but couldn't. And Rios' size and his ability and his determination allowed him to withstand that onslaught. And then he put his own onslaught on Acosta, who wore down because he was being pursued by a bigger, stronger fighter. At 140, that advantage goes away. And we've seen the jump from 135 to 140. A lot of fighters cannot make it and do it that well. One of the most notably recently was Nate Campbell, as well as way back when, 30 years ago, Alexis Arguello. It was one jump too many. Now some of you say, well, what about Manny? He's special. He is the anomaly. He's the exception to the rule. Okay? Julio Cesar Chavez, the exception to the rule. Okay, Brandon Rios, I'm not saying won't grow into being a junior welterweight or a welterweight. He has the frame to do so. I wouldn't rush him into any of these crazy fights with sharpshooters like Amir Khan or against the likes of Timothy Bradley right now. I think him fighting Juan Manuel Marquez is basically a crossroads fight that's in Marquez's favor at the moment. In another year, it may be, the scales may have tipped. I think, in my opinion, I would highly pursue a fight with Humberto Soto. I think that Rios would probably beat Soto at this point. Not 100% sure, because who knows what's going to happen. And Soto is a pretty heavy-handed guy, basically, and a sharpshooter. Lands on Rios and is a lot more durable than Acosta and Antillion. That's the fight I would pursue if I was Brandon Rios. I like what I've seen of him. I just think that there are limits, and in my mind, watching him, I can't decide whether he's the Fernando Vargas, whether he is the... I just lost my train of thought because there was another fight. Juan Diaz with a little bit more power, and that's where this parallel comes to with him being bigger, because Juan Diaz started at junior welterweight and was basically moved down to lightweight because he got knocked down pretty hard at junior welterweight in a couple of his early fights. And basically, even though he can't punch his way through a wet paper bag, guys at lightweight couldn't hurt him. And that's the same thing with Brandon Rios. If I was them, I would pursue as many title defenses as I could and unification fights at 135. And even if somebody's coming up from 130, go ahead and swallow them up too. That's my opinion on that. Friday Night Fights last week, a great brawl between Pavel Wallach and Pavel Wallach, it was Wallach and Delvin Rodriguez. The first half of this fight was very sloppy, in which Wallach pursued Rodriguez to get his head in his chest, and basically they kept falling into each other. I thought the draw was appropriate, and like Teddy Atlas and Joe Tessitore said after the fight, I think that if you would have gave the fight to Rodriguez, I'd be okay with it too. Given the fight to Wallach, I would not be okay with. But I do think a draw was definitely, nobody's arguing with a draw, or should be arguing with a draw. And personally, like the fighter said, I think I'd like to see this fight again. High contact fight. Problem with Delvin Rodriguez is that Delvin Rodriguez would benefit greatly if he could get Emanuel Stewart as his trainer. He's got the exact frame of a traditional Emanuel Stewart fighter, like Tommy Hearns, like Milton McCrory, like Hilmer Kenty, like those guys. He does not maintain distance well. He does not maintain his leverage well. He's better than Paul Williams at it, let me put it to you that way. He's not as good as Paul Williams, but as far as maintaining his height to his advantage and his reach to his advantage, he is a lot better than Paul Williams at it. And I think that Emanuel Stewart would basically teach him to use his left hand better, because I don't think he uses it anywhere near enough like a Tommy Hearns would to basically set up his right hand and get more knockouts or do more damage to the guys he's fighting, although he did do some serious damage to Wallach's face. And one of you wrote it looked exactly like Hasim Rahman after the Holyfield fight. Good fight. Also, which I did not preview either, Antonio Tarver, and I think Above Beneath or somebody had reported this on my channel, Avellino or somebody, went to Sydney, Australia and won a TKO over Danny Green. I did not see this fight, but it's a moderate surprise to me, because I thought if Tarver, who knocked him down in the second round, was going to win this fight, it would probably be by almost like a shutout decision, because Green is very crude, and he's been tore up in sparring at the Wild Card Gym by James Toney before. But again, he has a win over Roy Jones Jr. This is a perfect example and a segue here. Roy Jones Jr. has been knocked out, and although he got hit in the back of the head by Danny Green, and Antonio Tarver goes and stops this guy, and Antonio Tarver is 42 years old. What does that tell you about Roy Jones' ability to compete at the top level anymore? And I wouldn't even say this is the top level. It's over. I'm sorry, but it's over. And I loved Roy Jones when he was in his prime. I thought he was like one of the best athletes on the planet. But this should be a surefire sign that when you can't really do anything with Bernard Hopkins, and yet Joan Pascal drills him to the canvas twice in what I thought was a losing effort both times, and then Antonio Tarver takes a guy that stopped you in the first round and lays waste to him over 9 rounds on enemy turf, what does that tell you? I mean, good win for Tarver. I think, you know, this isn't the cruiserweight division. There's other good fights out there for him. I know he probably wants to fight at heavyweight. I think he said that. But the thing is that he's, what do you call it? You know, he's at the end of his career. And he's in a place right now, Tarver is, much like Bernard Hopkins, where he has to cherry pick his fights, the right fights, because cherry picking the wrong one could be very detrimental to his health. Good win. Now I want to go ahead and preview the upcoming fights for this weekend. We're already 25 minutes into this video. I don't know if most of you like this. You know, it takes forever to upload it to YouTube, but in any event, coming up, come on, system. Tomorrow night on ESPN2 Friday Night Fights, Anthony Durrell is taking on Kevin Engel in a 10-round super middleweight fight. Should be interesting. I think this is a good way to get Durrell back in the swing of things. The brother of Andre, Anthony Durrell. All right, the one you guys have been wanting me to. Let's see if this is also on here. There's a couple of other ones. In London on Saturday night, integrated sports pay-per-view. Card is being headlined by Derek Chisora taking on Tyson Fury. 12 rounds for Chisora's British heavyweight title, vacant Commonwealth title. True story. Back in the 80s, the British Commonwealth titles were contested over 15 rounds. Yeah, way back when. I'm not kidding. You could look at some of the fighters' records. Like, I'm trying to think of what the I think Johnny Owen, who died in a fight with Lupe Pintor, had won a Commonwealth title over Paul Ferrari. I believe that might have been a 15-round fight. Very, very, very interesting. But that covered all the former British colonies, basically, and British, well, not all of them, because the United States didn't partake in the Commonwealth. Basically, the British Empire is what it was. Okay, it's a toss-up fight. My gut would tell me Tyson Fury, but I think Chisora's got some skills to him. I'm not sure who wins this fight. Tell me what you think. I wouldn't bet off of what I think about this because I don't know enough about either one of them. I just know that Derek Chisora was about to be cannon fodder to Vladimir Klitschko not too long ago, and luckily he let his countryman David Haye be that. On Fox Deportes in Ciudad Obregón, Mexico, Orlando Salido makes the first title defense of his WBO featherweight title that he wrestled away from Juan Manuel Lopez back in April against Kenichi Yamaguchi. Listen, here's the deal. There's been this flood, and I wouldn't say flood, but there's been several times in which a Japanese fighter now has gone to Mexico and scored upset wins. Most notably Johnny Gonzalez a few years back getting absolutely annihilated for the 122-pound title. The thing here is I think Salido is the rough and tough, kind of like a Carlos Molina, and I'm not sure how Yamaguchi's going to be able to handle this. But I really think that if you were going to bet on this, I'd go with Salido to win this fight. Gil Clancy used to always say that when very good average fighters, club fighters, stumbled upon and won a world title, winning the title made them 25% better. And what this dealt with, although I never heard Gil Clancy say it per se, I've just read about it, is that it's a confidence thing. Salido went into Puerto Rico and wrestled that title away from Juanma. He has to be confident in anything he does from here on out that he can prevail against Yamaguchi, which I expect him to. All right, the big fight on HBO. 140-pound unification fight between WBA title holder Amir Khan, the betting favorite, and Zab Judah, the newly crowned IBF champion. All right. My mind is telling me Amir Khan will survive some anxious moments, maybe stop Judah late, or win a decision. My gut's telling me that somewhere along the first 4 or 5 rounds, Judah is going to, with his speed and his southpaw stance, land a left hand on Khan's chin. And although, as we found out against Marcos Maidana, one punch is not going to move Khan off his steady legs at the 140-pound limit, it's the second or third punch that Judah lands that will do the damage. And I expect that both of these scenarios could happen in this fight. Again, my mind tells me Golden Boy and the Khan people would not take this fight if they were not certain that they could win it. It took a lot for them to get into the ring with Maidana, and they survived that. But this is a whole nother animal, and I'm going to tell you why, and why Zab Judah has a really good chance. And my gut's telling me that he's going to pull this off. Not because he and I are both from New York, but more along the lines that Judah has power at 140, lots of it. Okay, he also has taken the punch of true welterweights. Khan is not a devastating one-punch knockout fighter. He's a slashing, banging, smashing kind of a puncher where the accumulation is going to get you later on, like it did to Paulie Malignaggi. The situation is this. Maidana might have more power and landed on Khan's chin and had him seriously hurt. Zab Judah has the better missiles to deliver the power. It's straight down the alley, okay, and it's coming from a southpaw stance. The only problem with Zab Judah is he doesn't stand as tall as Amir Khan, and if Freddie Roach is doing his job, Amir Khan will keep Zab Judah at extra arm's length distance away from him, because the closer they are, and I'm not talking about right up in each other's face, I'm talking about at middle ground, Zab Judah is going to have that avenue or that lane to land that straight left hand. Okay, you know, Amir Khan possesses a pretty good jab. He throws some sloppy power shots like Oscar De La Hoya did. And Judah's been, you know, in the past capable of catching those kind of shots on his chin, which is also questionable at this weight. He was very sturdy at welterweight. It took a lot from Miguel Cotto to put Judah down. He has been shown in the past that, even in recent fights like against Mathis, you know, that his chin can be dented. The key to this fight is a couple of things. One, whether Judah can get to Khan early, even if he doesn't knock him down or knock him out, but he hurts him enough to know that he's not to be played with, and Judah can maintain his composure with Pernell Whitaker in his corner to follow a game plan. This can be a very close, interesting fight. If Judah starts to tire, if Judah starts to get discouraged, Khan is going to roll. Khan is a momentum fighter. He builds momentum and then rolls. It's a confidence thing. He has to get his feet and his legs under him, and then he starts rolling. He gets into a groove. It was very much like Tommy Hearns, not in the way they fight, but in the way that their mindset is that they start rolling. If they start establishing a jab, the next is a right hand, and then some other punches, and then it's over at that point. The game, you may as well just hit Control-Alt-Delete. Your chances are over once that happens. Maidana let that happen. Luckily for him, he's got the Hail Mary and the panic button to push and basically cook Khan when Khan was getting careless again. Judah has to basically mess up the apple cart early, and if he can get Khan out of there, great. If he can basically keep hurting him in different spurts and win a decision, that's fine. I don't see it happening that way. I see Judah needing a knockout to win this fight. Remember, Golden Boy's the one in charge here, not Main Events, who backs Judah. The fight goes the distance, and it's a close decision. Amir Khan's getting the decision. I think, again, a lot's going to be determined in the first 2 or 3 rounds of this fight and how the fight lays out. I would hope we see the best of both of them, because if we do, I don't know who's going to win. If Khan, who looks like his career is progressing, and Judah's has kind of gone down and recovered a flat line and looks like it may be sagging again, if those two things are happening, Khan is going to roll in this fight. And I expect at some point, if Judah gets frustrated that he can't hit Khan, or he's getting hit with a certain punch over and over again, like, all Khan really needs to do is watch how Floyd Mayweather fought Judah. I don't know if he's capable of disposing of his left hand, just shooting straight rights, powerful straight rights, because he kind of slaps with his power punches sometimes, Khan does. Unless somebody's just racing in recklessly with their chin exposed, he basically slaps with his punches when he's made to move forward. It's a toss-up. I mean, again, my mind tells me Khan by a decision or a late stoppage, but my gut tells me, Judah, could stop Khan early. Judah could hurt him and basically start dominating the fight. What I'm hoping happens, I'm hoping for a fight much like De La Hoya versus Ike Corte. That's what I'm hoping where we see, momentum shifts and we see the best of both fighters at certain points in the fight. If the fight unrolls like, everybody thought that was going to be a high contact fight and were disappointed by some of the lack of action in the middle of that fight, but it was very chess-like, and it was when it opened up in the 6th round, it became very entertaining to watch, and I'm hoping this fight follows that same pattern. Alright, that's 35 minutes, that's enough for me. Listen, keep watching. I'm going to go ahead and do a recap video whenever I get a chance to, and hopefully we'll be, keep the comments and the questions coming. Thanks for being with me. Take care. I will see you next time.